So how's that going to affect another player by saying horrendous jump? I think you can figure that one out, champ.
Nick Kyrgios just went off on Jannik Sinner in a shocking IG Live meltdown, and fans can't believe what they heard. The back and forth got heated, personal, and downright brutal. But the truth behind this confrontation runs deeper than what you saw on screen. And I have every detail they don't want you to know. A history of tension, rivalries in slow motion. Nick Kyrgios and Jannik Sinner's tension didn't erupt overnight. It built slowly, match by match, across 3 volatile years. Their first notable clash came at the 2022 Miami Open, when Sinner edged Kyrgios in a tight 3-set thriller. The Australian's frustration boiled over mid-match. He smashed a racket, muttered at the umpire, and glared across the net as Sinner calmly packed his bag and left. That image, rage versus restraint, became symbolic.
Kyrgios said the sport's image was being tarnished.
I would never, even in my entire life, ever try and dope in this sport. This is something that...
As their careers diverged, the rivalry gained texture. Between 2023 and 2024, Sinner ascended rapidly, capturing the 2023 Miami Open title, reaching the 2024 Australian Open final, and breaking into the ATP's top 3. Kyrgios, meanwhile, battled recurring knee and wrist injuries. His absence only widened the gap, but comparisons persisted. The two represented opposing ideals: Kyrgios's charisma and spontaneity against Sinner's calculation and calm. Tension simmered off court too. In mid-2023, Kyrgios tweeted, "Some of these new kids are way too programmed," a post widely read as a dig at Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. Asked about it later, Sinner deflected gracefully, "I let my tennis speak." Fans, however, didn't let it go. Comment threads turned every small gesture, a handshake, a glance, into analysis fuel. By 2025, their dynamic had evolved into narrative mythology, the rebel versus the machine. Kyrgios embodied chaos, mercurial, emotional, magnetic. Sinner embodied discipline, consistent, unflappable, sponsor-approved. When the Instagram Live comments surfaced, it didn't create tension, it crystallized it. Analysts were quick to draw parallels to past rivalries. McEnroe versus Borg, Connors versus Lendl, passion versus precision. But in this digital age, those contrasts play out in real time, under the microscope of millions. Kyrgios's rant tapped into something primal, his fear that tennis was losing its soul to algorithmic efficiency. In truth, the feud isn't hatred, it's philosophy. Two men representing two paths, one burning bright, the other burning steady. And as tennis evolves, their story feels less like a feud and more like a mirror, reflecting what the sport values now and what it might soon forget. Genius or loose cannon? The Kyrgios paradox. Nick Kyrgios has always lived in the space between brilliance and implosion. Since stunning Rafael Nadal at Wimbledon 2014, he's been both the sport's most electrifying showman and its most volatile rebel. His talent is unquestionable, serves that blur physics, drop shots that mock convention, touch that rivals Federer at his peak. Yet his record, marred by fines, suspensions, and walkouts, tells a story of self-sabotage as much as skill.
Like my dad, my parents were big reasons why I played tennis. And then I kind of went through a phase where I hated it, and then I just realized how many people look up to me and just...
By 2019, Kyrgios had amassed 8 ATP code violations in a single season, including a record-breaking $113,000 fine after an outburst in Cincinnati. Still, his magnetism never waned. Fans filled arenas for his unpredictability, not just to watch him play, but to see what he'd do next. When he reached the 2022 Wimbledon final, the narrative shifted. Maybe he'd finally mastered his chaos. But consistency never followed. Kyrgios's 2025 Instagram rant against Sinner reopened old wounds. Was it another tantrum or a critique of conformity? To some, it felt like rebellion against the sport's sterilized image. To others, another excuse for volatility. ESPN's Patrick McEnroe called it classic Kyrgios, a genius trying to make sense of his own reflection. Behind the antics lies honesty. Kyrgios has spoken candidly about mental health, admitting in 2023, "There were times I didn't want to be here." That vulnerability resonated with fans who saw him as painfully human. the athlete who bleeds emotion in a sport that rewards suppression. Yet that same rawness fuels his undoing. Each controversy feels like déjà vu, passion crossing into self-destruction. The paradox defines him: entertainer and enigma, critic and culprit. The 2025 meltdown didn't redefine Kyrgios, it reaffirmed him. Every generation gets one player who refuses to fit the mold. For tennis, that's Nick Kyrgios. Brilliant enough to change the game, restless enough to never stay inside its lines. Calm in the chaos, the Sinner persona. If Kyrgios is fire, Jannik Sinner is ice. The Italian, born in the snow-capped Alps of San Candido, carries into tennis the stillness of his alpine roots. Before turning pro, he was a junior ski champion, a discipline that shaped his calm under pressure. That composure now defines him on court.
Of course I was worried because it was the first time for me, and hopefully the last time that I'm in this.
By 2025, Sinner had become the face of modern professionalism, measured, efficient, and almost eerily composed. His rise was meteoric yet methodical. ATP titles, a 2024 Australian Open final, and a reputation for quiet domination. Where others celebrate, he nods. Where others argue, he breathes. That stoicism became both his armor and his brand. Gucci, Rolex, and Lavazza built campaigns around his effortless control, the anti-celebrity who thrives in stillness. During the 2024 Wimbledon quarterfinal, when a heckler disrupted his serve, Sinner simply reset, delivered an ace, and walked back to baseline. Commentators called it cold-blooded serenity. When Kyrgios accused players like him of being too robotic, it hit a nerve. Fans split again, some agreeing that modern tennis feels soulless, others praising Sinner's professionalism. His refusal to respond publicly after Kyrgios's outburst spoke volumes. It wasn't indifference, it was dominance through silence. Insiders say Sinner's control isn't innate, it's learned. Early in his career, coaches noticed his emotional restraint and built his routines around it. Structured warm-ups, strict diet, minimal social engagement. It became survival in a sport where one lapse can unravel months of work. The Kyrgios-Sinner contrast, therefore, isn't personal, it's philosophical. Kyrgios demands feeling, Sinner demands focus. Together, they represent tennis's eternal tension: chaos versus control, impulse versus intention. In the noise that followed the Instagram storm, it was Sinner's silence that echoed loudest. And in an era where emotion is currency, perhaps that restraint, the art of not reacting, is what truly defines greatness. Fan reactions and media frenzy. The fallout from Nick Kyrgios's Instagram Live wasn't contained to tennis circles. It exploded into mainstream culture. Within hours of the stream, the clip dominated sports networks and social feeds. ESPN, Sky Sports, and even BBC News ran segments dissecting every second. On X, formerly Twitter, hashtags like and divided fans worldwide. TikTok edits flooded timelines, pairing Kyrgios's quotes with dramatic music and slow-motion replays of past matches.
The general reaction of the players was quite positive, even when the things came out. Then there have been, of course, some different voices, but this is in everything.
But something unusual happened in the days that followed. The conversation began to shift. While early headlines painted Kyrgios as melting down again, others started asking deeper questions. Was he wrong or just raw? Analysts debated whether his criticism of the robotic new generation carried truth about tennis's evolving identity. By October 16, 2025, even former players were weighing in. John McEnroe, once branded a rebel himself, told Eurosport, "Nick's got a point. The sport needs emotion. It needs characters." Meanwhile, Sinner's quiet professionalism earned praise from legends like Roger Federer, who commented during a charity event in Basel, "Jannik represents balance. That's what the sport needs too." The divide reflected something bigger than a feud, the clash between old-school artistry and new-school precision. Kyrgios embodied emotion and entertainment. Sinner symbolized evolution and excellence. Social media turned that contrast into a cultural debate, and fans picked sides based on personality as much as performance. By October 20th, both camps seemed weary. Kyrgios's management declined further comment, and Sinner's team urged fans to focus on tennis, not talk. But memes, podcasts, and YouTube breakdowns kept the discussion alive. Kyrgios's stream had become more than gossip. It was a mirror for the sport's shifting soul. Then, just as the buzz began to fade, an unexpected development reignited interest. Kyrgios liked one of Sinner's Instagram posts, a training clip captioned, "Keep working, always." It was a small gesture, but to fans, it signaled something, perhaps respect, perhaps regret. For a rivalry built on contrasts, that single double tap felt symbolic. Maybe the story wasn't about conflict anymore, but about two athletes reflecting different paths toward the same goal, finding meaning in a sport that demands both control and chaos. Inside ATP walls, damage control and dialogue. Behind the scenes, the ATP scrambled to contain the fallout. Publicly, officials maintained neutrality. "We encourage all players to express themselves respectfully," said an October 18, 2025 statement. Privately, however, the tour worried about image. Sponsors had begun asking questions. Kyrgios's behavior, once seen as box office entertainment, now risked overshadowing the sport's professionalism.
Like, I feel like I'm helping the sport. I'm creating more attention, and anyone that thinks that I'm bad for sport is just an idiot. Like, they've obviously got no idea. No idea.
Inside the ATP headquarters in London, executives debated their response. Some argued that Kyrgios's authenticity was exactly what tennis needed to reach younger audiences. Others feared it was crossing into circus territory. A leaked internal memo, published by The Telegraph, revealed the dilemma. "We must balance individuality with integrity. Players are ambassadors, not entertainers alone." Meanwhile, Sinner's camp stayed silent, a move that earned him quiet admiration among peers. Fellow player Casper Ruud commented, "Jannik doesn't need words, his tennis speaks." But even among players, opinions were split. Some sympathized with Kyrgios, acknowledging the pressures of constant scrutiny. Others felt his behavior reflected poorly on everyone. Then came the unexpected twist. ATP Player Council members reportedly reached out to both Kyrgios and Sinner, encouraging mediation. According to Tennis.com, a private conversation between the two was facilitated before the Vienna Open. What began as damage control evolved into dialogue. Sources close to both camps described the meeting as surprisingly honest. By October 25th, whispers of reconciliation began circulating. During a Vienna practice session, Kyrgios was spotted courtside watching Sinner train. Cameras caught him applauding after a clean forehand winner. The moment went viral, again. But this time, it wasn't chaos driving clicks. It was calm. Inside ATP walls, relief followed. What could have been a PR disaster turned into a story of maturity. Officials privately commended both players for cooling the temperature. Sponsors, once nervous, expressed optimism. The crisis had evolved into a case study in growth. In the end, the ATP didn't need to silence its loudest voice. It only needed to give it a reason to listen. The private apology, Vienna, October 27th. The story could have ended in silence, but it didn't. On October 27, 2025, during the Vienna Open, a quiet moment between Nick Kyrgios and Jannik Sinner changed everything. It wasn't staged, and it wasn't televised. Just two players, one locker room, and a conversation that finally bridged months of tension.
And that was almost 11 years ago. And it's been an uphill battle ever since. You know, everyone thinks that I'm that type of person, but it's like I've gone through my whole life trying to prove to people that that's not me.
According to insiders, Kyrgios approached first. He'd flown to Vienna to practice and support close friend Thanasi Kokkinakis, but after 2 days in the same facility, the air between him and Sinner grew too thick to ignore. Witnesses said Kyrgios waited until after Sinner's training session, then entered the locker area and simply said, "Hey man, can we talk?" What followed was a 20-minute exchange described as humble and genuine. Kyrgios reportedly apologized for the comments made during his Instagram Live, acknowledging they were born from frustration, not animosity. Sinner accepted, shaking his hand and replying, "No hard feelings. We both care about the sport, just in different ways." The gesture remained private for days until fans noticed something unusual. Kyrgios reposted Sinner's latest highlight reel with the caption, "Different styles, same love for the game." That single post garnered over 1.2 million likes and flipped the narrative entirely. For a player once defined by chaos, it was Kyrgios's quietest moment that resonated the loudest. The apology wasn't for PR or headlines, it was human. It showed that beneath the noise, there's still respect among competitors who live under impossible pressure. When asked about it at a Vienna press conference, Sinner smiled faintly. "Tennis is emotional," he said, "but at the end of the day, we're all trying to be better." Kyrgios, for his part, told reporters, "I said what I needed to say privately. That's enough." For fans who'd followed their saga since Miami 2022, it felt like closure. Not a rivalry extinguished, but evolved. Two athletes learning that the real victory isn't on court, but in the courage to confront one's own reflection. Redemption in motion, from outburst to opportunity. By November 2025, the narrative around Nick Kyrgios had transformed. The same player once accused of sabotaging his legacy was now being hailed as an example of accountability. His emotional outburst had turned into an unlikely story of growth. After reconciling with Sinner, Kyrgios re-entered training in Sydney with renewed focus. Videos from his practice sessions showed a calmer demeanor, still fiery, but grounded. "Feels good to just play again," he told Channel 9 during a brief interview. "I've said my piece. Time to let the tennis do the talking." Fans noticed the shift immediately. Gone were the cryptic tweets and mid-match explosions. In their place, structure, discipline, and a hint of peace. Sports psychologists described it as a turning point, the moment when self-awareness replaced defiance. Sinner, meanwhile, continued his rise, reaching the Paris Masters final that November. When asked about Kyrgios, he replied simply, "Everyone grows in their own time." That mutual respect reshaped how both men were covered in the media. The feud became a lesson. ATP officials privately admitted that the reconciliation boosted morale among players and sponsors. Netflix, which had been filming segments for a new season of Breakpoint, even hinted at dedicating an episode to their story, framing it as one of the sport's most unexpected resolutions. For Kyrgios, the comeback wasn't just physical, it was emotional repair. His relationship with the game, once strained by burnout and self-doubt, had found new meaning. He began mentoring younger Australian players, advocating mental health awareness, and posting less about conflict, more about craft. The silence after the storm had finally turned into music. If his 2025 Instagram rant exposed his chaos, his Vienna apology revealed his heart. And in a sport that often demands stoicism, maybe that vulnerability, raw, unfiltered, and real, is exactly what tennis needs to stay human. Before you go, remember, even the fiercest rivalries can turn into respect. What started as an IG Live feud ended with Kyrgios and Sinner finding common ground. Their reconciliation showed that growth can follow chaos. If you want to see how this unlikely piece shapes what comes next, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. The next chapter might surprise everyone.